Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Carolyn, and this channel is all about true crime, mystery, and anything abnormal. I highly recommend subscribing because this channel is definitely a vibe. Today's story is about the man who killed Jeffrey Dahmer. His name was Christopher Scarver, and he was born July 6th, 1969. He was one of 5 siblings, and he grew up in Milwaukee. He had a very difficult childhood, and he ended up dropping out of high school, and then he ended up getting kicked out of his house. Similar to Jeffrey Dahmer, he struggled with alcohol and heavy drinking at a young age. So I'm going to go over his crime that got him put in prison and then go through the events that led to Jeffrey Dahmer's murder. Christopher Scarver joined a trainee carpenter program, and he really felt like this was a way to get his life together and get on the right track and start building towards a future that he would want. He joined this trainee carpenter program, and he was told once he completed the program, he would get a full-time job. While he was part of the program, his supervisor, Edward Patz, ended up getting fired. Once Edward got fired, that unfortunately left Christopher in a place where he was no longer going to get a full-time job out of this program. And he was furious. He felt like this opportunity that he was so looking forward to just got taken away from him in the blink of an eye. And this led him to even heavier drinking. And when he was drinking, he started hearing voices. He said that the voices told him he was the chosen one. He also heard voices that told him that he was 1,000,000 years old and he was the Son of God. Christopher felt at this point that his life was completely falling apart. He was still extremely angry and resentful about losing this carpenter job. And on June 1st, 1990, he decided to go back to the site where he had been the carpenter trainee. When he arrived, the site manager, John Fayan, was there. And another employee, Steve Lohem, was there as well. Christopher Scarver went in with a gun and demanded money. John Fayan gave him $15 because that was all the money that he had on him. And this just seemed to infuriate Christopher Scarver even more. Scarver then held a gun to Steve Lohem's head and demanded more money. John Fayan, as I had mentioned, didn't have any more money on him, but he wrote a check to Scarver for $3,000 out of the company account. And again, the amount of money infuriated Scarver. And I don't know why, if Scarver had an idea in his mind of how much money he wanted, why he didn't just demand the amount of money he was looking for. Like if he was looking for $10,000, $20,000, I don't know, but he never gave them a specific amount of money that he wanted. So whenever he was given money, it would infuriate him because he was expecting more, but never was clear on how much he wanted. And then he shot Steve Lohem several times and he passed away. John Fayan was able to flee and he survived. Christopher Scarver then left the site and went to his girlfriend's house, and he was arrested sitting outside of her home. When he was arrested, he told police that he had planned to turn himself in because he knew what he had done was wrong. Scarver was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He was then sent to Columbia Correction Institution, which was located in Portage, Wisconsin. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sorry, Wisconsin. If I'm incorrect in my pronunciation, please let me know. I mean, you guys have had it rough. That same year, the world learned about Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. Jeffrey Dahmer's case, as you probably know, was covered by every news source imaginable. Everyone in America and beyond knew exactly who Jeffrey Dahmer was and exactly what he had done. Jeffrey Dahmer pled guilty to 17 murders and was convicted of 16 of those murders. The world was disgusted with Jeffrey Dahmer. He not only killed these poor young men, but he tried to turn them into living zombies. He dismembered them, necrophilia, and obviously cannibalism. And as the entire world was so horrified by his crimes, prisoners were just as disgusted with him as well. In prison, Jeffrey Dahmer was considered the lowest of the low on the totem pole. And even though he was sentenced to life in prison, he was going to get prison justice one way or the other. He knew it, and everyone else knew it. The first year that Jeffrey Dahmer spent in prison, he was in solitary confinement. And this was by choice for his own safety. And if he wanted to live, that's where he should have stayed. But after a year, he decided he didn't want to be in solitary confinement anymore. And it's only speculation, but I believe that decision he made because he didn't want to be alive anymore. Jeffrey Dahmer was well aware of how much he was hated in the prison. So I think his decision to come out of solitary confinement, he knew what his fate was going to be, in my personal opinion. Jeffrey also told family members that he didn't care what happened to him. And honestly, no one else cared what happened to him either, including the prison guards. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't come out of solitary confinement and keep his head down and kept quiet. Oh no, he was out and he wanted to be noticed. He was well known to tell prison guards that he bites. He also made a sign and hung it in his cell that said, "Cannibals Anonymous meeting tonight." He also decided to taunt the other prisoners. And this is why I believe that Jeffrey Dahmer wanted to die. I really believe, in my opinion, that he came out of solitary confinement because he wanted to die. He would take food and shape it so that it would look like body parts, and then he would put ketchup on it to look like blood, and he would leave it for other prisoners to find. He was just doing the most. In my opinion, he was doing everything he could to get himself killed. Now, though Jeffrey Dahmer was out of solitary confinement, he was supposed to, at all times when he was outside of his cell, have at least one prison guard escorting him. Could you imagine having to be the prison guards that deal with that? Before Christopher Scarver killed Dahmer, he had never had any personal interaction with him. He had, however, watched Dahmer from afar in the prison yard. He never approached or spoke to him because he did not want to become the target of Dahmer's sick humor. Another prisoner had attempted to kill Dahmer by slashing his throat, but he was unsuccessful. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Christopher Scarver was assigned to work detail. The two men that he was assigned to work with were Jesse Anderson, who was a man who was serving life in prison for killing his wife, and he was assigned to work as well with Jeffrey Dahmer. Scarver had said that he was provoked because the three of them were all working together, and Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson were behind Christopher Scarver, and they poked him. And when he turned around, neither of them would admit to doing it, but the two of them kind of laughed together at Christopher, and this upset him immensely. And then the three men were left unsupervised for 20 minutes. And most people believe this was intentional. And I agree. I think 100% the prison guards allowed this to happen, but you know what? I'm not mad about it. And I think being a prison guard would be a very difficult job, especially working with murderers. But when Jeffrey Dahmer arrived, that was a whole other level of sickness. And the prison afterwards obviously said that this was not intentional and blah, 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 blah. But let's be real. Those three men were left alone so that Dahmer could be killed. So while the three men, unsupervised, were cleaning the bathroom, Scarver went up to Jeffrey Dahmer and asked him, "Did you really do what they say you did?" And then he took a metal pipe and beat Jeffrey Dahmer to death. The metal pipe that he used, he had gotten from gym equipment and removed the weights off the end of it. And how did he get that? Because he also killed Jesse Anderson, and he had beat him with a wooden stick. So to me, if he has two different weapons, and they weren't small, so were the prison guards maybe looking away on purpose? I can't see an argument for anything other than absolutely, but let me know in the comments if any of you think that this was not intentional. And one thing that Christopher Scarver talked about when he killed Jeffrey Dahmer was how Jeffrey Dahmer did not react in any way. He never tried to defend himself, and he didn't respond as though he was hurt. And Christopher Scarver has said that Jeffrey Dahmer in no way attempted to protect himself. Scarver was armed with a 20-inch pipe, and Dahmer let him. Once Christopher Scarver was finished killing the two of them, he went back to his cell. He then told prison guards, "God told me to do it. Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson are dead." So at this point, the prison guards then go to find Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson, and both of them were fatally injured. Jeffrey Dahmer was declared dead an hour later at the hospital. Jesse Anderson died 2 days later. Scarver was sentenced to 2 additional life sentences on top of the life sentence that he was already serving. It is believed that the killing of the 2 men was racially motivated. Obviously, everyone knows the majority of Dahmer's victims were young Black males. And Jesse Anderson had killed his wife, but after he had killed his wife, he had tried to frame 2 Black men for his crime. Scarver was quoted as saying, "Nothing that whites do to Blacks is just." In 2004, Scarver brought a federal civil rights suit against officials of the Wisconsin Secure Program facility. In this suit, he claimed that he was subjected to cruel and unusual punishment because he had been serving 16 years in solitary confinement for killing Jeffrey Dahmer. The suit was dismissed originally, but then he won on appeal. He then won on appeal, and himself and about 40 other severely mentally ill prisoners were moved to another prison. Scarver was eventually moved to a prison in Colorado. Scarver, while he was in prison, was diagnosed with schizophrenia. As of today, Christopher Scarver is still in prison in Colorado. He is apparently very religious, and he's written 2 books of poetry. A lot of people regard Christopher Scarver as a hero for killing Jeffrey Dahmer. And I can understand that to a certain point, because did Jeffrey Dahmer deserve to die the way he did? Absolutely. But Scarver already had a victim of his own. So I can't imagine what it would be like for the family of Loam, who he had killed, to hear everyone talking about what a hero he was. But I'm sure that it probably brought a lot of comfort to the family of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims to know that he was killed the way he was. I'm not normally someone who supports vigilantes, but in this case, let the mofo burn. And I've gotten a lot of requests to do Jeffrey Dahmer's story, but it's been told so many times and there's nothing new that I can add to it. So I just thought it would be interesting to look into the man who killed him, because before I started researching this story, I had no idea who had killed Jeffrey Dahmer and his whole backstory. I know a lot of you really enjoy that I do stories you haven't heard of before, and when I'm researching to look for new stories to do, I always try to do ones that I've never heard of before because I just find it more interesting. But I do get a lot of requests to do very popular cases, and I may start doing some popular cases. I prefer doing the unknown ones, but I may throw in a few popular ones here and there. But one that I will definitely be doing is Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, because that's one I can add something new to. If you don't know, I'm Canadian, and I lived very, very close to where Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka lived. And I also, many years after the trial, actually got to know someone who testified at Paul Bernardo's trial. So I will definitely be doing that story at some point. But if you have any requests, leave them in the comments below, or you can follow me on Instagram, which is just abnormally Carolyn, and leave suggestions there as well. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you'd like to see more, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.